Welcome to the Deep Leadership Podcast. Today I'm joined by Dr. Recker. Eric spent the first half of his life doing what he thought he had to do, putting his nose down and enduring the grind. But it was never quite enough. Through his experiences with triathlons, mountain climbing, owning a dental practice with a team of 20, becoming a pilot, and extensive travel, he learned that what he was searching for wasn't at the top of the mountain. In the second half of his life, he's committed to helping people learn to live present in their own lives and find a life of fulfillment, not just accomplishment. Through his coaching, speaking, and writing, he is working to help as many people as possible learn to win the now. And I am excited to have him on the show to learn how we can be fully present in our lives. So Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, John. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about this topic. And I love the pivot you made in your life, and I want to hear about that. So tell us a little bit about how you arrived at this idea of win the now, and why is it such an important message right now?
Yeah, I like to say win the now was forged through fire. So the fire was the burnout. So I have a long story, but I was a relentless striver. And I think a lot of business owners, we are relentless strivers. But that led me to three distinct seasons of burnout. I'm a high capacity person. I think there's a lot of those people. John, I'm sure you're a high capacity person. We use the term high achiever a lot. There was a time in my life, the first round of burnout, I was buying my dental practice from my dad. I was building a new dental practice, and he didn't want anything to do with that. He was going to keep working for me, but he didn't want anything to do with that. I was on 3 boards. I was training for an Ironman triathlon. I was training for a endurance bike race, and I was also coaching both of my kids in soccer. So you can probably imagine how many of those things I was doing really, really well. So I was torched.
Yeah.
So I sort of endured that time of burnout, I guess. I survived. I wasn't thriving. I wasn't leveling up, doing any of the things that I really wanted to do. But then during COVID, I really had something that I'd never had before, and that was some discretionary time. I think a lot of people were disillusioned. What do I do during this time? My dental practice had to be closed for 8 weeks. That was the governor mandate. We were pretty fortunate in Iowa. Some places were 3 months or more. We had 8 weeks. So I'm a person of faith. So I needed to create some space in that time. Or else it was just going to be urgency. There were a million webinars. There was all this new stuff about infection control, new things we'd have to do in our office. So I committed to 30 minutes of quiet each day. And I know that sounds super noble when I mention it, but I will tell you, I failed miserably the first time. I think I looked at my watch 46 seconds into it that first day. I said, I got to be getting close, right? Almost 30 minutes. But what I learned from that being quiet is that I really needed to learn how to be present in my life. I really needed to do that. And so I like sports. I enjoy watching sports. I enjoy competing. I'm a very competitive person. So I like wins. And I think we can all agree that we like wins, right? Given the choice to win or lose. And I really thought about how important it was to win the day or win today. Well, I did a little research on that, and there's a lot of people who are talking about win the day. So I dove a little bit deeper, and I thought, okay, what does an average day look like for me? And a lot of times I would find myself at the end of a day coming home to my wife. She'd ask, how was my day? I would reduce it to the least common denominator. If I had one bad patient experience, that's the first thing that would come out of my mind.
Yeah.
If I had an equipment problem, that was the first thing that would come out of my mind. So I thought, boy, I can't gauge my day on one thing. I have to look at grabbing wins throughout the day.
Yeah.
So the phrase that settled one day when I was sitting in quiet over lunchtime, when I was back, I had a rough morning, and I thought, man, what do I do with all this? And win the now popped into my head. And I thought, okay, so what does that even mean? Well, I started figuring out what a now looks like for me. In my life as a dentist, I'm scheduled by the 15 minutes. Yeah. And so in that 15-minute time, what does a win look like? So a win might look like a good patient interaction. It might look like helping someone have less anxiety. It might look like having a good conversation with one of my team members. The reality is there's going to be a couple losses throughout the day. But when there's a loss, when we struggle with getting somebody numb, or somebody comes in really anxious and it's harder to get them calmed down, or if a team member is really struggling, that can look like a loss. But we pause, we find out what we can learn from it. So then we turn it into a win, and then we keep going because the next now is around the corner. So basically what Win the Now is a constant reminder to get us back to the present moment, to pull us back into what's right in front of us, because the only currency that we really have is the moment in front of us. Not stuck in the past, not worried about the future, but right now.
I love this message. I heard somebody once say that, regrets if we spend a lot of time in regrets, we're our minds in the past, things that we should have done or could have done or what have you. And if we're thinking about the future, often we have anxiety of getting ready for something big, or what happens if this happens or this happens. And so when we spend time in the future and in the past, it can cause a lot of problems with us. And so the idea of just focus on the now, focus on the today, 15-minute increments. I love that idea. I think it makes a lot of sense. It really does, because I think if you're in the now, you make the best out of that window that you're in today. And there's an author named John Acuff who wrote a book called Finish, Give Yourself the Gift of Getting Things Done, or something like that. But he said, if you mess up, one of the most important things to do is to get back on as soon as you can. Like if you're dieting and you mess up a day, the best thing to do is the next day, get back on track. You're saying in a 15-minute intercom, 15 minutes, if you're off, you can get back on track, or you can steer that or learn from that 15 minutes and get back on track versus waiting an entire day. I love the concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah. And so for me, it's 15 minutes, but someone who lives in a corporate life, there's a lot of meetings. You can get meetinged to death. Meetinged isn't really a word, but you can get that way.
Yeah.
So the now is the meeting. What does a win look like in the meeting? If you're presenting, it looks like delivering a great message, engaging your audience. If you're a participant, it looks like being dialed in, maybe not choosing to check email during the message, maybe just being fully in that room, contributing to it. So I love to talk about helping people figure out what their different nows look like, and what wins look like. And then when you go home, if your family's around, your spouse or your family or whoever you're with, if you're sitting around the dinner table, what does a win look like? For us, a win looks like great conversation. Nobody's got their phones. We're asking highs and lows of the day. Maybe what's the most interesting part that happened in the day. We talk about things like that. And then we all get to grab wins from each other. And I love it, because I haven't met anybody who doesn't like to win. And this is cool because you can win and it doesn't have to mean that somebody else gets a loss.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about is you're talking about family dinners, and so you might say, what does a win look like for me? Well, it's like we all enjoy a dinner together in this conversation, but the kids are running around, they got practice, they're getting ready for this, that, and the other thing, and people are doing what you want them to do to win that win. How do you not get the frustration that here's my win looks like, and maybe their win looks like something else? Do you find that, or is that ever an issue?
Yeah, it sure can be. And I know this looks different. My sister and her husband have younger kids, and they're running around to different things. And man, if their kids can sit at the table for 10 or 15 minutes before their attention span runs out, that's a win for them. Yeah. So sometimes you have to be compromising with your wins. Like, what can not only a win for me look like, but what can a win for all of us look like? If we just connect for a couple minutes, or if we just facilitate one of our kids showing up quick, eating, and right out the door, we created a win for them. So you're trying to win for yourself and you're trying to win for others. The sweet spot is those win-wins where, like this podcast, this is a perfect opportunity for a win-win. I can be dialed in and present, and we can be having a great conversation. it can uplift me, uplift you, and bless your listeners. And boy, then we get a lot of wins. It gets pretty exciting.
Yeah, I like that. I really do like that. It doesn't have to be, like you said, you may have to modify what a win looks like in your current state with little kids running around or what have you. I love that idea. And then look for those win-win opportunities as well. One of the things I was going to ask you is, high achievers, right? We're motivated by accomplishments, getting things done. I mean, obviously, becoming a dentist is not something that's easily done, right? It's a lot of hard work to get there. And then, you're into triathlons and climbing and becoming a pilot. All these things are hard activities that take years to master. And you've done a lot of those things. Why, so you have reached the top of the mountain many times in your career. So why weren't you finding what you were looking for at the top of the mountain? You should have received high achievement, right? And everything should be great when you get to that top rung, right? Everything's perfect, right? Isn't it?
It sure would seem that way. And I think that is one thing that a lot of high achievers, probably a fair number of people who are listening to your podcast are leaning in a little bit right now, because they've been to the mountaintop. They've been promoted up. They've achieved this. When does it ever mean anything? And so that was a struggle for me. Having a history of being bullied when I was growing up, I made a pact with myself on I was either in third or fourth grade, on the sideline of the recess kickball field. And I don't know about you, John, but recess kickball was everything in Iowa in the 80s. I mean, it was huge. And I was told I wasn't good enough to play. So I made a pact with myself that I said, I'm going to be so flippin' good at everything that I ever do that nobody's ever not going to pick me. And it really was, I was probably 8 years old when I made that pact. And it really was in my 40s, and I'm still in my 40s. It was really in my 40s before I realized that I was still striving for some of those bullies that had moved on from me, probably, once recess was over. And this happened repeatedly on the recess field, but it really stuck with me. So nothing was ever good enough for me. Yeah. Finishing dental school wasn't good enough. I had to be in the top 10 in my class. A 5K wasn't good enough, and that scaled to a 10K. Half marathon, triathlon, up to the Ironman distance. None of it was ever good enough. And I found myself several years ago, I was going to do the Leadville 100 mountain bike race in Colorado. And 3 days before I was going to do that, we had just driven out the day before, and I was in just ridiculous shape. I had been training like crazy, and we hiked Mount Princeton, which is probably about 30 miles away from Leadville. We got up, and I beat my brother-in-law up to the summit by quite a ways, because I was just in amazing shape. And I stood up there, and that's where it hit me. If you don't know why you're climbing the mountain, you're not going to find the answer at the top. And I was just, whoa, like game changer. That was so big. So, excuse me. In that moment, I knew that I was going to finish the Leadville race. I knew I was going to finish it, but I also knew it wasn't going to mean anything to me. So I finished it, got the belt buckle. And the only thing that really meant anything to me was the fact that my son ran across the finish line with me. And so that cured me of endurance racing. Then and there, I was absolutely done with it. It wasn't worth the training. It wasn't worth all of it. So I think it is so important in life that we know why we're striving. Why we're achieving. Achievement just for the sake of achievement is always going to leave us wanting more. There will always be somebody who has more than us. There will always be somebody who's higher than us. Even if you're the richest person in the world, there will always be something else that you feel like you haven't conquered. So finding your why you're striving, why you're achieving, what the end goal is and what you hope to accomplish, and then how to celebrate waypoints along the way, because those things are so much more fulfilling than getting to the top of the mountain, finding out you're standing there alone, and then realizing that there's a taller mountain that you still got to climb.
Oh, Yes. Yeah. So I'm a power lifter. I enjoy weightlifting, and this week was PR week. So we went for PR on the top 3 lifts, and we had new PRs, which is great. But I was looking at the numbers. I was looking at the numbers this morning. This morning was deadlift, and we hit that. And but I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm like, I can do better than that. So I really identify with this idea of like being at the top of a mountain and looking at, oh, look, there's another peak I can go after. So is it that are we addicted to that? Addicted to chasing after something that I don't know, chasing goals? I mean, because it's not necessarily a bad thing, but like I think what you said is why are you doing it? And answer that question as to why are you chasing the top? Why are you trying to get to the top of that mountain? Why is it important? And I think that's probably something we all need to be thinking about. Why are we doing what we're doing? Spending countless hours work for, people are into every different thing, right? So whether it's fitness or, we were talking about ping pong. There's professional ping pong players out there that spend hours training, and so, but why are we doing it? And I think if I read some of the material, you talked about the difference between achievement and fulfillment. And I think that's kind of interesting to think about. So what would you say the difference is between achievement and fulfillment?
Yeah, I think a simple way to explain that is with achievement, you are always going to bump into the question, then what? There's always going to be a then what?
Yeah.
Now, for your powerlifting, that's a great example. If you're just trying to get in better shape, you're competing against yourself, you're proud of your accomplishments, you're like, wow, I still got it. I can still do it. Yeah. That's amazing. And that's awesome. You find fulfillment in that. But if it's only achievement for the sake of achievement, you will keep bumping into the question, then what? Okay. There will always be a then what. I remember running into somebody at a local event, and he said that his daughter was on track to graduate early from high school. So she was going to take graduate a semester early so she could get started on college. And she had a whole bunch of college credits. She would graduate from college in 2 years, and then she would jump right into her master's program. And each in between each of these things, I would say, and then what? And then he would say, well, she'll be 21 and she'll have her master's. And I said, and then what? And he said, well, and then she works. I thought, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Great question.
And she works for what, 45 years? And that, I don't know. To me, we got to enjoy the journey. We got to find ways to enjoy the journey. If we enjoy the journey, it's fulfillment. If it's only about achievement, there will always be that question, then what?
I mean, for me, at least, I found that when I got out of corporate life, when I finally, stopped banging my head against a concrete wall and became an entrepreneur where I can do that for no less money. So, just the idea of that corporate ladder. And my wife used to always kid me. She says, they've been dragging you kicking and screaming up the corporate ladder. I kept advancing and I didn't necessarily want it, but I just kept doing it. And then next thing you know, you're in these big jobs and you spend your whole life in meetings, and it's not fulfilling at all, right? Mm-hmm. It's not what I love is being in a manufacturing plant, being around hourly workers and really getting to know them, and then getting to know me. But I wasn't. When I ended up in a job where I was sitting like in fancy clothes, sitting in meetings all day. And was not for me. I did not like it. But, so I had the achievement, I guess, but I wasn't fulfilled at all. And I think it took me to start my own business, start my own manufacturing business, run the way I want to. I wear jeans and a t-shirt and boots and I know my people, they know me, and I have a lot of fulfillment. I don't make as much money as I used to in that big job, but I have so much more. I love what I do now. I absolutely love going to work every day. It's a different mindset. It's fulfillment, I guess you would say.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yesterday, I spoke to a group of 150 IT workers, and so leadership to everybody. And it's a global company, about 4,200 people globally. And they had been at an this was their company IT summit. And this was day 4 of 4. And they had heard IT. And that's great because they need to. It's awesome that they could come together, but they wanted me to come in and talk about mindset. So we talked about win the now and grabbing wins. And we also talked about self-care. We talked about being honest with yourself about where you're at on a scale of 1 to 10. And I gave some tools to try to help people figure out where they're at. But then you figure out where you're at, but you sure as heck don't stay there. You think life is constantly draining us. What can we do to get back on the right side of things? How can we move ourselves up? And how can we level up and thrive both in our work, in our relationships, in all aspects of life? Because I think we have to think about that, because achievement, just for the sake of achievement, you know this, John, it just drains you. That's all it does. You're so focused on it. If you can find meaning along the way, if you can find moments along the way. You mentioned John Acuff. He's one of my favorite authors. And he actually has a new book out called All It Takes Is a Goal. And I actually am in that book because of the...
How cool is that?
Because of the awesome moments list. I went ballistic on that when I started listing awesome moments list. I'm a moment chaser. That is what I do. I live for moments, because once time passes, all we have is the memories. So if we can make moments along the way, it gives us rocket fuel to propel us in whatever we're doing next.
I love that. I love it. One of the things I'm thinking, and I'm hearing your story, and you're very successful. You have a successful dentist. You have a great practice. You have a great team around you. You could just do that, right? And be fulfilled and have a great life. Why are you on a mission to help other people understand this and what you learned through your experiences? Why are you trying to pass this on?
You know what? This is an easy question for me to answer, because I get asked this probably weekly in my practice. Because, initially when I'm doing this kind of stuff, it's like a blip, and people think, oh, he'll do this for a while and then he'll settle back down. But the reality is that I think we go through the journeys that we have in life to be able to help other people along their journey. I really believe that. We are better together for sure. I've been through a lot in my life. I've been through a lot positive. I've been through a lot negative. I've learned so many lessons. And if I keep those lessons to myself, I'm going to lay on my deathbed someday and feel like I missed out.
Yeah.
But I feel like I have been given this win the now message, and I have been given some of the experiences that I've had to help people on their journey, to help them not struggle for 20 or 30 years with some of the things that I struggled with, and help them be able to move forward. So the message is just too big to keep to myself. So that's really the easiest answer to it. And the real blessing in that is that I now have a partner in my dental practice. He's fantastic. He supports what I'm doing, both in the office and out of the office. So I'm seeing patients 3 days a week, and then I'm doing coaching and speaking on the other 2 days a week. And this is just right now, it's the sweet spot. It's great because I get to interact with my patients and my team and lead them and do all that. And then I get to work with amazing people outside of the office as well. So I couldn't be more thankful for where I'm at right now.
I love it. I love it. Well, I find myself in a similar situation. I'm a CEO during the day, and I'm a podcaster and author at night. So it's fun to have those and to be able to do, because I'm 56. And I always believe that at one point in my life, I'd pay back and I'd share. And I'm in that part of my life, and I absolutely love it. And again, just being able to impact other people's lives with the lessons that I learned in mine is it's very fulfilling for me. So I enjoy this part of the journey for sure. And
that is so
I love
cool.
passing it on. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So cool.
So your book is called The False Sense of Urgency. Love that. I love that idea. And How to Win the Now. So who should read this book? I mean, is it for everyone? Is it for leaders? Is it for who should be reading this book, and what, beyond what we've been talked about so far, what can they expect to learn from this book?
Well, the people who should not read it are people who never struggle with urgency. If urgency is never a thing that pops up in your mind, then choose another book. But I think we all battle urgency to some extent.
Yeah.
And really during COVID, I battled what I call the false sense of urgency. So that's being productive just for the sake of being productive.
Yeah.
It's this background angst that runs like an extra app that you can't get shut off in the back of your head that's always saying, I got to do more. I got to be more. I got to be more productive. I can't rest. I can't let off the throttle. I can't do any of that. So I think most of us have experienced that. Certainly all high achievers have experienced that. So basically, I talk about what that is, and I talk about some things that we can do, some systems that we can put in our life to help quiet that down a little bit, and then help us. And then we turn around to the concept of win the now, which I think is the ultimate antidote to the false sense of urgency. Because if we are living in the present, we can kick that urgency back a little bit. And my goal is with Win the Now is that people can develop a new mindset about being present. You know, there's a lie that social media tells us that we are so connected, that we have all these friends just right there. But the reality is we've never been more alone. We've never been more isolated.
Yeah.
And if we can find the present moment, and if we can find good relationships, and if we can also find some time for our brain to idle when we put down our phones, boy, we're going to live a much more fulfilling life than we would if we're fighting that urgency all the time.
I love that. Such an important message. I think I do see people running around chasing things all the time. I mean, you know, just if you talk about the phone, I have nothing turned on my phone to the point where my wife is like, you need to turn your ringer on certain times of the day in case your son who's deployed calls, you know, because I have it all turned off. I have no notifications because I want to be, for that reason, I want to be present with my employees, with the work that I'm doing. I'm also working on a doctorate right now. And when I'm writing, I want to focus. And so I want to stay focused. So I literally turn it off to the point where some people say it's hard to get a hold of you. I said, no, it's not. Just send me a text message. I will get back to you when I'm not in the moment, not being present. And I think I'd rather be this way than the other way, with chasing everything that bings and bops and on my computer and my phone. And you never get anywhere if you're constantly chasing that, whatever interruption happens. And it's not healthy. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think we're meant to be like that, you know?
Not at all. And I think what you said is so huge. I'm trying to coach my people to just ask one simple question with the phone, but it's in your pocket. And that is, why am I picking this up?
Yeah.
Just pause, make yourself answer that question, because our phones are digital pacifiers. We stuff a pacifier in a crying kid's mouth, and we put a phone in our face so we don't have to face whatever is bothering us in our brain. Used to be we had to let our brains idle. We had to work through those things. And now we just get a digital pacifier that gives us a steady trip of dopamine until we feel good enough to put it back down. And then we don't have to face our problem. We kick it down, and then it just gets bigger. Eventually, we got to face it.
Yeah, that's it. I was just listening to a podcast where they were talking about the idea that we used to be bored. And when we were bored, we could work out these things that we had that were bothering us, you know, and we're never bored anymore because we have that pacifier in our pocket. And when I talk to young people, one of the things I talk about is the idea that we're a consumer society. We're consume all the time. And the greatest people in history weren't consumers, they were creators. And so I encourage them to create, don't consume. And so, you know, the idea of how much time do you spend consuming social media, right? Or how much time do you spend creating something that's going to, affect people around you? And I think that's what I encourage them, because it's just, it's too easy to fall in the mindset of just keep consuming and consuming and consuming. That
is so good. I love that. I might borrow that one.
Oh, you can have it. It's free. No charge. This is fantastic. What final message would you like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah. So I got asked this recently when I was doing a podcast, and it said, if you could go back to day one of work and give yourself one piece of advice, only one, what would it be? Well, the reality is I found out when I was burnout that there was an equation that was always present. Always present. I was overcommitted and I wasn't taking care of myself. Overcommitted can mean a lot of things. I was at that point, this was like BlackBerry time. It wasn't so much with the phone, but I was overcommitted in a lot of external things. And I was not taking time to take care of myself. Now I would say overcommitted can look like streaming too much, watching too much time on or spending too much time on your phone. You can have internal overcommitments as well, but ultimately that's part of it. But the other part is you have to take care of yourself. And that's what I would tell myself when I was starting dental school way back when. I would have said, you have to take care of yourself. You have to find time to sleep. You have to find time to let your mind refresh. You have to find time to do things that make your heart sing, that wake up your soul. You have to do those things because we can only pour out so much. If we're not taking time to refresh, something's going to happen. Our body's going to break down. Our mind's going to break down. We're going to get burned out. We're going to get in a car accident. There's lots of things that can happen if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Such an important message. I love that. Very important. Leaders, you got to take care of yourself or you got to take care of others. I think it's a really important message. The book is called The False Sense of Urgency and How to Win the Now. How can people find out more about you, your book, and the services you provide?
Yes, the easiest place is just my website, ericrecker.com. You can find the links to my social media on there. My blog is on there, links to the book. I'd love to have a conversation about coaching or speaking. All those links are in there. You can read a little bit about the Win the Now story. It's pretty much there, one stop.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
there's one more thing on there. I do offer a free 5-day knockback burnout challenge. So if you feel like you're starting to go down that road of burnout a little bit, you're maybe not real sure, you want to investigate it a little bit. It's just a series of a few emails that you'll get and just give some easy exercises for you to start knocking back its hold a little bit. Because I think burnout's pretty prevalent. Yeah,
absolutely. So again, listeners, you get something free. Okay. You heard it here. You got it free. Something that Dr. Eric Recker is giving you for free, so you need to take advantage of it. By the way, his website's full of all sorts of great stuff. I've been all over it. It's great blog articles, great story about the Win the Now. This free this burnout challenge, to challenge the burnout. Again, these are resources for you. They're free. Take advantage of them. Go to the links that we have here below in the podcast. And, and if something's really standing out and this is really, lights are going off in your mind about, wow, this is a problem that I have, reach out to Eric and find out from him. He's been through it, right? And he's developed a system to get you on track. So reach out to him, see what you can do to figure out how to get a hold of this before it gets a hold of you. So I really do encourage listeners that you reach out. And again, links are in the show notes. Go follow those links and reach out to Eric. See if he can help you if you're struggling with any of these things that you've heard in this message. Because likely, if you're listening to a leadership podcast, you're a high achiever, and you're probably facing some of these items yourself. So again, I encourage you to follow up with Eric and learn how to get better, how to take care of that. So, Eric, I want to thank you for coming on the show, sharing all of this and all your journey, and now what you're doing to help people. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me, John. This has been fantastic.
I have enjoyed it. Thanks again. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for listening to Deep Leadership. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and share so we can continue to build a world with better bosses. Until next time, this is John Rennie saying take care and lead well.